They kind of woke up one morning and decided, what if we took all of our money and spent it towards a real footballing project with a good coach, an idea of who we want to be? And it's kind of a terrifying proposition because they have taken a step forward. And it's crazy to say after losing Mbappe to Real Madrid, but Real Madrid got worse. PSG got better. I understand that correlation is not always causation, but that's kind of what we've seen.
You mentioned the attacking players. They're the ones that get the headlines for PSG, drive around the sports cars. But the engine room of this team is in the midfield, and they just get the job done week in, week out, don't they?
Absolutely amazing. When you look at this three, Fabian Ruiz, João Neves, and Vitinha, we can also include Warren Zaire-Emery, who at one point in the season was starting ahead of Fabian Ruiz. But this three is absolutely incredible, and you wouldn't think it's not loaded with a number 6 that's 6'1" and is an incredible, physically imposing player. It's Vitinha who controls the game, João Neves who controls the game. Fabian Ruiz is a terrific complementary piece in that midfield, both for Spain and for PSG. And I think we look at this midfield and we see everything in it. We see contributions in the final third with line-breaking passes. We see pressing moments that allow them to recover the ball and get after their opposition. But I think most of all, the biggest thing that this midfield does is they control the game. It's so difficult in modern football. It's so often where games are won and lost. It's not something that we talk about very much in terms of when we're after the game. We're breaking down the goals. We're breaking down the assist makers. But when you can control a game through the middle, when you come up against this PSG side, you will have moments where it's 45 seconds to a minute without the ball. Then you get it back. Then you lose it again, and it's 45 seconds to a minute without the ball. They just over and over again are controlling the tempo, controlling the rhythm, and making it impossible for you to play. I think that's what this midfield does better than any other in Europe right now. This is the best combination of three that we see, and I think, obviously, the Inter three are fantastic in their own right, but this is a different level for me.
Let's talk a bit more about Ousmane Dembélé. He has been absolutely red hot in 2025 so far. We spoke to our French football correspondent, Tom Williams, and asked, is Dembélé the best player in the world right now?
Ousmane Dembélé's performances for Paris Saint-Germain this season have created a real feel-good factor in France. He burst onto the scene nearly 10 years ago as a teenage winger with Rennes and immediately became one of the most popular footballers in the country, a preposterously talented player, but also a bit of a character. It's slightly scatterbrained, the famous interview where he doesn't know whether he's right-footed or left-footed. Popular with all of his teammates, particularly when he's playing with France, close friends with Kylian Mbappe. There's always been a lot of affection towards him in France. But his career has had its ups and downs. A great season at Borussia Dortmund, but he then goes on strike to force through a move to Barcelona, which put a few noses out of joint. Really difficult first few years at Barcelona. Constantly injured, accusations about his timekeeping, his professionalism. Wins the World Cup, of course, with France in 2018, but is dropped after the first game and plays quite a peripheral role, and injuries then prevent him playing a bigger role with France over the years. I think people were happy to see him come home when he joined PSG in 2023. Decent first season, and then suddenly this season he has exploded. There's a feeling that he is finally fulfilling that potential that was first seen in his breakthrough season at Rennes. He's clearly a front runner for the Ballon d'Or, particularly if PSG win the Champions League. And I think if he were to win the Ballon d'Or, that would go down very well with French football fans.
Well, Witty, can a footballer who doesn't know whether he's left-footed or right-footed win the Ballon d'Or? That's the big question. But the numbers he's putting up, especially this calendar year, have been absolutely unbelievable. 48 matches across the season for Dembélé, 33 goals, 12 assists, only one less goal than Rafinha, and then Lamine Yamal as well. He scored plenty more goals than that, slightly less in terms of the number of assists, 21 versus 12. I mean, clearly it depends on his performance in the final. If he puts in a match-winning performance, scores a goal, perhaps assists a goal, that will certainly forward his case to be the Ballon d'Or winner. But when you compare him against Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, some of the other great players in European football and world football, you have to make a pretty good case, don't you?
Right. As the star goal scorer in this side, he will get that level of consideration. I think there are better players. Honestly, I would pick either Neves or Vitinha in this midfield as the representative of PSG towards an individual award, understanding that you don't have the statistics to back it up. But what Dembélé did, if you measure the period in between the November international window and the March international window, 24 goals in that span of time over basically 4 months. It's absolutely ridiculous. Over the course of the whole season, he's got 33 and has added an element to the game that was always missing for him. And honestly, I am still a little bit worried about going into this final, because PSG, you go back to the way that they dominated against Liverpool in that first leg. He does eventually get the goal in the second leg, but at times they are missing chances. At times they are not putting away the chances when they are dominating in games, but has obviously gotten huge goals in this Champions League for Paris Saint-Germain. Is, I think, in some ways part of the catalyst for the turnaround of this team. You go back to the Manchester City game in the Champions League in the month of December when they moved him into the center of the forward line. I think that opened up a lot of things. And basically, Luis Enrique said, yeah, you know, we've spent 150 million on Kolo Muani and Gonzalo Ramos, but we're going to play without a striker. And he figured out the best way to deploy Dembélé up front. He's obviously been a huge part of this team, but I still am worried that the period that we saw where he was brilliant, those 4 months where he scored the 24 goals, represent an anomaly over the course of his career. He has never been a clinical goal scorer. For Borussia Dortmund, for Barcelona, it's one of the many frustrating things about his career. And so I do wonder if, when it comes down to it, in that moment in this final, if he's going to be able to finish off that chance. So there is that little part of me that's worried.
And just quickly as well, I do think credit has to go to Luis Enrique with the work that he's done with Ousmane Dembélé, because he was out in the cold, wasn't he, earlier on in the season, left out of the game in the league phase against Arsenal, and now he's one of their best players.
Yeah, and that's the man management that he's done with a few players in this side. We can now basically close our eyes and pick the team, but that wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious from day one who the best 11 was going to be, because they have depth in almost every position. They have players that are going to come off the bench in this game. You're going to go, wow, Gonzalo Ramos is coming off the bench. Okay, one of that front four is going to have to come off the bench, whether it's Doué or Kvaratskhelia, Barcola or Dembele. One of them is going to have to come off the bench in this game. So you have to do a real job of managing the squad and managing the personalities of a group of players that all think they should be starting and playing.
Winning the Champions League, of course, would undoubtedly be the cherry on the top of the Simone Inzaghi project at Inter Milan. Won the Serie A, of course, 3 times the Supercoppa Italiana and 2 Coppa Italias as well. For more on Inter, let's bring in Marco Messina. Marco, great to see you. I'm sure you're looking forward to this game just as we are. We spoke about the risk there of a trophyless season for Inter Milan. How much do you think that plays into the psychology for Simone Inzaghi going into this game?
Yeah, of course, it's been a big topic, right? And it's not something that Inter fans want to even rationalize or think about, because they have such a magical night that could be tomorrow. I think that it's always met with a balanced approach of understanding the moment and how important that could be. But I think that this is not a young Inter side. It's a very experienced Inter side. It's an Inter side that's been there before. So if there's any club that could deal with that sort of pressure, if there was any team, honestly, in all of Europe that could deal with, all right, we might go trophyless, let's not go into this with a fear approach, it would be Inter, and it would be Simone Inzaghi, simply by the way that they approach finals, how they've done in knockout tournaments, and also by the confidence that they get after knocking out Bayern Munich and then knocking out Barcelona in the way that they did. I think there's something very real about a feeling being that it's their time, it's meant to be for them to win the Champions League.
And I also think, Marco, when we talk about this team, so often it becomes about age, right? This is an older team, average age older than 30. There is that very thin line between old and experience. I think this side usually is on the right side of it. They're experienced. How significant will that experience be in this final, coming up against a PSG side that, while brilliant, is fairly young?
It's the reason why I had Inter beating Barcelona, and it's the reason why I have Inter beating PSG. It's because of that experience. That Barcelona and the PSG, I think they will win Champions League in the future. Phenomenal team, PSG. What they've been able to do from nearly not qualifying out of that league phase, which was very easy for a lot of the big teams to get through, and then where they've gone from here, there's a lot to be said about Luis Enrique's team. But for me, that experience matters. It's the small details in Champions League football, in Champions League finals, and that is what I think will get them over the hump. You learn more from your losses than you do anything else, and I think there's a real sense around this Inter side to talk about their experience that this could be the last time as a group, with all of it together, that they could get to a Champions League. They've made 2 finals in the last 3 years. But do we really see Mkhitaryan being part of that squad for such a long time? So I think that there is that sense of, if we don't do it now, when can we do it? And I think that that'll push them over the corner.
Marco, I think it's fair to say we haven't seen the absolute deadly best from Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram in the Champions League, particularly this season for Inter Milan. If they provide that in the final, could that be the critical thing that gets through this PSG defence, those two really on fire?
I would add both of them at the same time, because I think that they've both had moments in their season. There's moments where Lautaro, especially in the beginning of 2025, what he was able to do, Thuram earlier on in the season as well, they haven't hit the top form at the same time. And I think that would be, obviously, without even saying how important that could be. But I think what's so special about this two-man front line, which everybody has said recently, and I reiterate that we don't see a lot of teams play that two-forward system. But the reason why I think it's so important, both of these strikers, they're not selfish strikers. They want the rest of the team to get involved. And that's why Inter was able to beat Barcelona. It was because they, even if they're not involved in the goal scoring, they're the ones who will check in. They're the ones that will allow Dumfries or Di Marco to get in behind and allow Inter to exploit a high defense and use the speed that they have within their squad. And I think nothing said that more than when Thuram was basically on one leg limping around, but he didn't want to get off the pitch, just to show you the desire that he has. And needless to say, Lautaro scored in the Copa America final. He's come up clutch. Marcus Thuram, for me, has always been a big game player. If you think back to his first season at Inter, he scored in both of the derbies against Milan. The first goal that he scored in the 5-1 win was something exceptional. So these are big game players. But the beautiful thing about these strikers is that they care more about the team than just himself.
Now, on the subject of Lautaro and being on one leg, we haven't seen Lautaro since the second leg against Barcelona, when I think he said this week that he couldn't lift his leg for 2 days after playing that game because of how much he gave and he was carrying an injury. Is there any worries about him and what he can deliver in this final tomorrow?
No, not for me, not at all. And I think Lautaro has shown the connection that he has to this Inter side, and you referenced it. He was crying afterwards, saying that he even sent, I think he showed a screenshot with his family saying that no matter what, I'm going to play in this match. And that just shows you that grit, that spirit that he has, the connection that he has to Inter as a club. And there's a beautiful moment even today on Sky Italia where he's being interviewed, and there's messages from his family that are wishing him best of luck. And he broke down into tears. You know, he's an emotional guy, and he lives with his heart on his sleeve. And I think that while you can look at that as a bad thing in terms of he's not been physically in the best form, but I think that Inter made calculated risks towards the end of the season in moments where they didn't want to push it. They knew the Scudetto would probably be out of reach, so they allowed him to get the recovery that he needed. And from everything that I'm reading, Inter is going to into this final at the best possible. Everybody's going to be available. Everybody will be healthy. And that was my only doubter on this Inter side. The fact that they have a full lineup at their disposal means everything for them.
How do you assess their chances in the final?
Well, I think it's a diversity team in terms of it's not just the Italian culture that is very solid defensively. I think they play good football. They have players that can make the difference, and I think they have some, of course, right now for me 50-50 chances to win.
What do you think will decide this final? Because everybody we speak to say it is so difficult because they are so closely matched. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's small details, small moments of the game that you have to be concentrate. Don't miss easily the ball. Don't, of course, make too many mistakes that can compromise the result. But this is what you always try to do, no?
If you had to pick one Inter player who could be a match winner, who would it be? One player who could make the difference.
I think Thuram.
Why?
Because he's, well, first, he's the one who's more close to the goal. Theoretically, he's fast. I think he have quality, works very hard, so maybe.
And finally, do you think they can do it?
Inter?
Are you confident?
Inter?
Yeah.
Well, now I support UEFA, but a little bit with Inter more because I played 4 years in this amazing club, and I will be very happy for all the fans.
Enjoy the game.
Thank you.
Always good to see you.
Thank you.